So yeah, I completely agree with you. This is not by any stretch of the imagination the scariest thing he's done. Not at all. But I chose this, or rather, I couldn't help myself from reacting to this for a very specific reason. Trump has done all kinds of really scary stuff, and this is not the first presidential term where he's done really scary stuff. As far as your comment about the thing I could have done is not vote for him, yeah, that's why I didn't this time. Also, it's worth noting, sometimes people are not exactly safe if they make voting decisions that differ from the environment around them. I'm not going to share details about that. I can't share details about that, but just something to keep in mind. The second time I voted for Trump, I didn't want to, but I felt that my well-being, my immediate well-being, depended on it. But anyways, that's besides the point. The reason that I made this specific video, which I'm working on a bunch of other videos because I feel very passionate about this, but the reason that I was like, okay, no, I need to make something about this right now, even if it's not the most polished, is because this is such a clear one-to-one example of something that is in scripture that we as Christians point at and go, oh yeah, that's bad. And what I'm talking about is the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where Nebuchadnezzar makes a golden statue of himself. And as we all know, I mean, a lot of us know how that story goes. They refuse to worship it. They end up in the fiery furnace. They're taken out of the furnace, all that stuff. But the golden statue of the nation's leader, erected by himself, is that one-to-one that I'm talking about. There are plenty of other clear violations of scripture that Trump has done, but this is kind of one of the most like blatant storytelling wise, if that makes sense. We've all seen many Christians growing up, especially when I did, have seen whatever VeggieTales did, their Nebuchadnezzar and like the chocolate bunny or whatever. And so that's a story that we have stuck in our heads. And as we know, storytelling is very, very powerful. So that hopefully that helps understand why I chose this to like make an unpolished video about. So theoretically, and of course people surprise you all the time, theoretically, Christians would at the very least, and especially if it is brought to them in a calm, loving way, not in a you suck, you're doing this wrong kind of a way, theoretically, having such a blatant example of something that is specifically mentioned in scripture as being an example of idolatry would help to, at the very least, start to get some of those rocks crumbling out from the foundation of their very strongly held political beliefs, because that is what happened with me. It was little things here and there that were very, very difficult to ignore when compared directly to scripture. So this is not by any stretch of the imagination the worst thing he's done. It's not even in the top 10, probably not even in the top 100. Like, as far as actual actions as president go, this is, I guess, benign when it comes to Trump. But anyways, no, I chose this because it's really difficult to explain this away. Even if people are saying, oh, it's a joke. Great. A God-fearing leader shouldn't be joking about making himself an idol. Like, that's why this video exists, because it is such a blatant example of something that is directly mentioned in scripture. And the reason that I'm trying to be very gentle about it is because the second someone started shouting down at me, the second I even felt the slightest bit condescended when I was a very staunch conservative, my brain would shut off. It was like, oh, nope, I already just don't want to hear anything you have to say. We're not going to agree. The echo chamber is strong in the very conservative world. And so I am trying to create content that I wish I would have had, that is coming from a loving place of going, hey, you don't have to go from A to Z immediately. You don't have to shift from black to white immediately. You do not have to go from being super conservative to super liberal immediately. I don't consider myself super liberal. I don't even consider myself liberal. So that's why I'm making this kind of content with the content that I am in the way that I am, because I know what didn't work with me and I know what did work with me. So I'm essentially trying to create the content that I wish I would have had, which is from a loving perspective, from a kind but firm perspective, based in scripture, and again, bringing it back to just coming from a loving, compassionate perspective. I think a lot of Christians can agree he's not really a good person, and a lot of people want to go, oh, well, all of this stuff is in his past. That's what I used to say. Like, oh yeah, he said something about grabbing women by parts that we shouldn't. be grabbing them ever without consent. That's in the past. And it's easy to overlook that. And it's a lot easier. I say easy to overlook that. I mean, in the grand scheme of things with the whole like mob mentality, not that it's something that easily should be ignored. It should never, ever be ignored. And honestly, I'm appalled that I ever thought it was okay to ignore. But anyways, it's so easy to let this mob mentality pull you away from sound logic. And that's something that I immediately would kind of shut my brain off. Again, if someone brought that up, it's like, oh, well, that's in the past. And if someone is loud about it, if someone is aggressive about it, at least in my experience, for me personally, when I was learning about this stuff, starting to learn about this stuff, and now, of course, that scene from The Devil Wears Prada where Miranda lectures Andy about using the term this stuff is playing in my head. But anyways, I keep getting off track. It just comes back to I'm trying to create the content that I wish I would have had.